Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, scholars. Good evening, great leaders, philosophers, lovers of wisdom, lovers of wisdom and knowledge. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us tonight. I know that the Easter services started to some. Obvious to some it will start tomorrow, but others are already busy with a holy, it's called Holy Week. But we are looking forward for a wonderful conversation tonight. As always, we've got our speaker. I'll introduce him shortly. Just want to thank you so much for joining us. We will start, and then others will find us on the way. But we thank you so much for joining us tonight. So I can see for now it's all our members and all our regulars, but you are may well just welcome if there are those, of course, they will be coming or they will be joining those who are joining us for the first time. We are leaders in leadership. We are a community of leaders. We meet every Wednesdays at 6 p.m. As leaders and as scholars to sharpen one another, to empower each other and to inspire each other. We are leaders talking to other leaders because we realize that it's important that as leaders, we must just congregate just among ourselves and talk about leadership issues, leadership dynamics and challenges that we all face. And also even to correct each other, whether we correct each other, whether we admonish each other, and as I've said, even encourage each other. We need to do that. We meet every Wednesday, as I'm saying. We come from all walks of life, from politics, from corporates, business, government. We've got leaders, or we've got academics from different universities that are here. That is why we always enjoy to be here with you, ladies and gentlemen. So if it's your first time joining us, a special welcome to you. And please do feel at home and just enjoy yourself. As I'm saying, that this is a safe space for leaders. So don't be shy, don't be diffident, but we'd like to hear from you as well. As I'm saying, that is a conversation. We believe that we come here to learn and to unlearn and to relearn. Those are most difficult ones, especially to unlearn. But it's important as leaders that we do that, because that is part of growth. Leadership, we always say here that leadership is not a destination. Leadership, it's a journey. That's why as a leader, you've got to develop yourself all the time, because you stop developing yourself, you'll stop growing, and then you'll soon become obsolete. Great leaders constantly develop themselves all the time. By the way, my name is Mazwe Majola. I'm from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We are here to train, to develop, to empower leaders from all walks of life. And we do that in different ways, in different forms. So we are going to have a wonderful time tonight, because we are discussing the most important topic, and the most germane and relevant and apropos topic, especially in our society. We are talking about leadership deficit. We are talking about the moral decay. And also we are talking about the future of South Africa. So it's a leadership deficit and a moral decay, and what our future looks like in the midst of this leadership deficit that we find ourselves in, and also the moral what we call the moral decay that we find ourselves in. Tonight, we will be empowered by my brother. I respect this brother of mine a lot. I will just introduce him. Then once I've introduced him, we don't want to waste any time, as I'm saying, that others will join us on the way. And then he will start, as always, he will address us. And then after that, we can engage him via, you can do that via, as you raise your hand, or you can use the chat room. So I respect this, as I've said, that I respect this brother of mine a lot, and I've told him that. I'm so humbled that I found him today, that he could join us in this platform. I know that he is the most busiest person, but he clearly availed himself to come here. And I must thank one of our members here, my sister, Dr. Mngomezulu, who assisted us to track this man and to find us. So thank you so much. Dr. Songela is our member here, and how wonderful it is when, as leaders, we can do that among each other. So let me yeah, I found it. So let me introduce Ubaba Mngomezulu, and then after that, as I'm saying that, I'll give it to him. So Mngomezulu comes from Ingwavuma in far northern KwaZulu-Natal. He teaches Africa in international perspective and international relations theory. He has 7 academic degrees, that is in politics, history, and education, plus a senior secondary teacher's diploma. These include a BPed degree and also 2 honors. One is in history and one in political science. He also holds 3 master's degrees, 2 in history and also 1 in political science. He also holds a PhD in African political history. 5 of these degrees were obtained at South African universities, while 2, including a PhD, were obtained at Rice University in Texas, that is in USA. To date, Professor Mngomezulu has published 6 books, 13 book chapters, 12 book reviews, and several articles at national and international journals. He has presented over 100 academic papers nationally and internationally, and has traveled to around 30 countries globally. He is a full professor of political science and deputy dean of research at the University of Western Cape, and served as the president of the Economic History Society of Southern Africa. Professor Mngomezulu belongs to many other academic bodies and also serves in the Nelson Mandela Museum Council. Mngomezulu is also a political analyst for national and international media houses, including radio, television, and newspapers. He also writes regular opinion pieces for them. His research interests include international relations, African comparative politics, governance, higher education, and traditional leadership. That is Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. Thank you so much, my brother. As I've said, thank you for availing yourself. We are looking forward to hear from you today. Take your time, whatever you prepared, whatever you want to give it to us. Just give it to us, and then we'll engage you once you have addressed us. Let me then give you a share screen so that you can start. Thank you. I think it's all right, my brother, when we are ready.
Prof, I'm trying to get to my desktop, but I only see iPad, whiteboard. And when I go to files, it only shows Dropbox, Box, and Google Drive. Can't take me to my desktop.
Yeah, I don't know, from my side, I've allowed you to share the screen or to do your presentation. Just try there from your side and see if you can. Unfortunately, because we are not there, so we don't know how your machine look like or how it looks like. But
now, ordinarily, when I go to the shared screen, it's supposed to take me to my desktop, but it doesn't. Only Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, Dropbox, and Microsoft SharePoint.
Okay.
And then when I go to files, it doesn't show anything.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there anyone who can assist people? Unfortunately, as I'm saying that, I can only do if it's in front of me. Anyone who understands what the professor is going through, can you please assist, ladies and gentlemen? I know you all used to presentations. What happens when the prof is is finding himself in what he's saying?
And maybe in the meantime, Prof, you can open it from your side, because I emailed it to you as well. I sent it to you on WhatsApp.
Oh, yo. Okay. Yeah. Maybe you can just start address us talk while I'm trying to navigate that. Oh, there you are. You've got it.
Okay.
We've got it. Wonderful. We've got it. Hallelujah. Praise God. Oh, Tamaku.
We can tell the age,
Yes, absolutely.
That's how you see the PPTs, Prof, born before technology.
It's so true. It's so true. Go ahead, my brother. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll be reading from my other gadget, and then you can just keep screening it from your side, Prof. Okay, so thank you very much, Prof, for the warm welcome, and thanks, colleagues, for having me today. I've been up and down sorting out a few things, and the weather has not been friendly as well, but here we are. Okay, without wasting any time, then the title of my presentation, as Prof has just indicated, is Leadership Deficit, Moral Decay, and the Future of South Africa. We will skip the outline, Prof, and then we'll just go straight to the introduction. And by way of introduction, I start off by saying that leadership is the core of the survival of any institution, be it public or private. While some leaders are born, others are groomed to assume this role. In other words, there are people who are not necessarily born as leaders, but then they are groomed to become leaders in the long term. And then not everyone can be a leader. Some are fine as followers and should operate at that level. This one is very critical because almost everyone wants to be a leader lately. Even people who don't have the requisite skills to lead, for some reason, they now want to lead. Some of those reasons will...
Prof, can I, sorry to interfere. It seems like what we have in front of us here is not what I thought it would be. It's a leader in the 2021 Gartner Major Quadrant, something like that.
No. It's not that
what,
one.
Yeah, so that's what appeared in front of us. Maybe it's it's a different file.
Did you open the one I sent you, Prof?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, please open the one that I sent you.
Yeah.
Prof. Majola,
Yes.
can I assist? Maybe
Please.
you send what Prof sent to you to your email. And whilst he's still addressing it, what you do, you then share from your side. Just send it to your email address and then you will be able to share. You take over the hosting. You are on mute, Prof. Majola.
I'm just concerned if the time will allow us. That's why I was saying the Prof, if you can just read and just continue, Prof will follow you, even if and then we'll send the slides to our, or
That's
the
fine.
presentation to our colleagues. But
Okay.
just take us through now on your notes, and then we'll follow you. Sorry about that.
Okay, Prof. All right, then I was saying that not everyone can be a leader. Some are good as followers, and they should just operate in that lane and not try to be leaders, even if they don't have the requisite skills to be leaders. To assume a leadership role, one does not have to kill contenders or to bribe voters, because the moment you kill other people and you bribe others, then by implication, it means that you don't deserve to be leader, but you are forcing your way into a leadership position. Leadership works in tandem with morality in order to produce positive results. So the reality here is that you can be a leader without morality, but the end product will not be positive. In other words, I can kill to become a leader and I can bribe to become a leader, but the end product will not be positive. It becomes positive if leadership works in tandem with the morality. Across Africa and in South Africa, leadership deficit and moral decay have become cases to our continent. Lack of development in Africa is associated with the leadership deficit. And I talked to this in 2018 when we were celebrating Mandela's birthday, and I'd been asked by one of the institutions in Kenya to talk about this. And my topic was basically on lack of leadership and its impact on development on the African continent. Maybe let's go on then to look at the views about leaders and leadership. Firstly, I'll start off by quoting something that just came out recently by Kenyan scholar who is a lawyer, Patrice Lumumba. He quoted a statement which read as follows, and I quote, "In Japan, a corrupt person kills himself. In China, they will kill him. In Europe, they jail him. In Africa, he will present himself for election." That says a mouthful. I'll repeat that through your chair. That in Japan, a corrupt person kills himself. In China, they will kill him. In Europe, they will jail him. And then in Africa, such a leader will present himself for an election. So this says a lot about who a leader is and how leadership is conceived by different people. Maybe if we can just pause for a moment and look at the different definitions of a leader. I'm not going to dwell much on this, especially because I'm preaching to the converted, people who understand what a leader is and what leadership entails. But then just for interest's sake, a leader is defined as a person who sets goals for himself or herself, and then of course make sure that he rallies people behind him. In other words, if one is a leader, the understanding that one will then rally other people around his thoughts or around her thoughts so that they aim for the same goal. Another definition is that a leader is a person who manages and controls other people. And then of course, especially showing his or her ability and also using his or her position. So in other words, regardless of how one became a leader, the understanding is that once one occupies the leadership position, there is an expectation that such a leader will have to manage and also control whatever happens in that organization. Then the last one is that a leader is defined as a person who instructs and controls people to secure predefined goals or targets. In other words, there are goals that are predefined and there are targets to be reached. And then the duty of a leader is then to take the organization towards that particular goal. In the event that the leader derails, then chances are that leader will have to be moved from that position because he or she will have ceased to provide leadership, which then takes us to leadership as a concept. According to Stockdale, the word leader was coined in the 1300s, whereas leadership came into the picture in the 1800s. So there is a big gap between the time when the concept leader came into the picture and when leadership was coined. So that is one difference. So Merriam-Webster dictionary defines leadership as capacity to lead. In other words, if one doesn't have capacity to lead, then chances are that person will not qualify to be a leader and therefore will have no leadership acumen. It is a complex combination of human qualities and actions. So the relationship here between qualities and actions is such that if a leader has certain qualities, those qualities will mean nothing until they are put into action, because there is an interrelation between the two concepts. It is not everyone who possesses leadership qualities. As such, not everyone can be a leader. Okay, now let's look at this question then. What defines good leadership? In answering this question, I'm going to draw largely from some of Mandela's quotes. At one point, Mandela said the following, and that was in 1962, I quote, "A leadership commits a crime against its own people if it hesitates to sharpen its political weapon where they have become less effective." So in principle, the understanding here is basically what Prof. Majola was making earlier on, that if you are a leader, you have to be constantly capacitating yourself because circumstances change and then of course context change. So a leader who doesn't sharpen his or her abilities will therefore cease to be a leader. That is what Mandela said, and this is in line with what Prof said at the beginning of this session. And then in 1989, Mandela made another statement, and I quote, "There are various standards by which to measure the significance of an organization. One of the most important of these standards is caliber of its leadership." In other words, we say that the success of any organization, be it public or private, is dependent upon, yeah, that's where we are, Prof, is dependent upon the leader's caliber. If a leader's caliber is questionable, then chances are the institution's image will also be questionable, and by implication, whatever happens in that organization will not produce positive results. And then in 1992, Mandela said the following, "There is nothing as bad as a leader making a demand which you know can never succeed," end quote. In fact, I remember using this quotation one time when the NEC of the ANC had made a ruling that no one must go and support the former president when he appeared in jail for the very first time, in court for the very first time. I said, no, know what? This is impractical. It's not going to work. And I was flying from East London to eThekwini, and from the airport going to town because I was going to be with SABC. I saw 7 buses full of ANC members in full ANC regalia. And then I asked myself the question, what has happened here? And then I was reminded of the fact that leaders had made a ruling knowing for sure that that ruling was not going to work at all. So the question is, why do you make a ruling which you know is not going to work? Rather, look at options. And then one of them I suggested at the time was that, why can't the NEC wait until people have attended, and then afterwards say, those who attended made a mistake, they were not supposed to go there wearing ANC regalia. In that case, they will have protected their image, but they failed to do so. Now, let's move on to talk about views about morality. And that is the next slide. The first point I make there is that it is, in its simplistic definition, morality refers to the standard of society used to decide what is right and what is wrong. In other words, the assumption here is that you have something out there, and then if you do it, it's either deemed right or deemed wrong. If it is right, of course, it is moral. And then if it is wrong, it is associated with immorality. So that is basically the general understanding. And then the Standard Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which is the next point, provides two descriptions of or definitions of morality. One is a descriptive one, and then the other one is a normative definition. Let's go to the descriptive definition of morality from the Standard Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It says morality refers to certain codes of conduct put forward by a society or group, such as a religion, or accepted by an individual for his own behavior. In other words, the point we're taking is a certain codes of conduct. So they are out there, and then a leader is judged against those. So that is the descriptive version. Then we go to the normative definition of morality. The normative definition then says morality is a code of conduct that, given specified conditions, would be put forward by all rational people. In other words, there is a general norm in which we understand morality, that it should be a rational thing to do. In other words, we cannot come up with something irrational and then say, this is how we define morality, according to the normative definition. Now, let's move on then to come closer home. Leadership and morality challenges in the South African context. In other words, we're looking at these issues from a theoretical/general point of view, and now we're coming straight to the South African context. Firstly, leadership and morality are in short supply in present-day South Africa. I know this is a critical point and a controversial point, but I'll be happy to take a counter views on this and then see if colleagues who hold a different view will assist us in trying to challenge this assertion that I'm putting forward, that leadership and morality are in short supply currently in the South African context. This is evidenced in a number of areas, and I've listed 10 of them. And then I'll look at each of these. The first one is political killings. The reason why you have political killings is because there is lack of leadership and there is lack of morality. I can't kill someone because I want his or her position, because chances are, after I've killed that person, there will be others who want to kill me. An eye for an eye makes the world blind. So there is no wisdom in killing someone just because I want a leadership position. The second one is intra-party squabbles and factionalism. We've seen this presenting itself in the context of the ANC. We've seen numbers going down simply because the party spends a lot of time in factional politics and intra-party squabbles, as opposed to leading the organization and then, of course, leading the country, by virtue of the fact that currently the ANC is the leading party in the National Assembly. And then the next one is service delivery protest. These service delivery protests come because leaders have ceased to lead. They are no longer able to lead, and therefore they engage in a number of activities which hinder service delivery. And then dwindling party support, deviation from party constitutions and practices, making claims and demands that are evidently impractical, dysfunctional municipalities, plutocracy. Let me stop on this one. Plutocracy, by definition, means basically looting state resources for self-interest. And we call this plutocracy. So we've seen this happening where most of our leaders engage in plutocracy and they still call themselves leaders and they associate themselves with leadership. And then, of course, lack of consistency in implementing corrective measures. A case in point, is the step aside resolution of the ANC, which was adopted in 2017, which has become a hot potato, as I've been saying in the media for the past couple of days, that in my view, they are supposed to put this thing aside, redefine it, and then make it a point that they are all reading from the same script, because at the moment, it's not assisting the organization, it's not assisting anyone. And then the last one is the politicization of the judiciary. This one is another controversial point, and I've been challenged on this one, but I still maintain my ground. And I've cited a number of examples to demonstrate that our judiciary has been compromised and has been politicized. Because judges are leaders in their own right, but then they've in fact compromised their integrity by engaging in political activities as opposed to looking at issues through the eyes of the law. So in a nutshell, I'm saying that political parochialism and self-centeredness, which promote self-aggrandizement at the expense of political parties or other institutions in the country, is what we are dealing with here. So the people we used to call leaders, those who are associated with leadership, are now engaging in what they call political parochialism. In other words, it's a myopic approach or short-sightedness, because I'm looking at the immediate results, but I don't think of the medium and long-term goals of what I'm trying to achieve. So then that becomes a problem, and it's a concern in the South African context. Now, somebody told me that you cannot be identifying problems without also proposing some solutions. So as I come towards the end, then, Chairperson, let me then look at this heading towards finding solutions, which is the next slide. So having looked at all the issues that I've outlined, all the concerns that I've raised, let us now look at some of the possible solutions. I start off by saying that rolling in the mark is not the best way to get clean. It doesn't make sense. So once we have realized that rolling in the mark does not make us clean, and yet we want to be clean, obviously it means we have to run away from mark and then go somewhere else where we're going to achieve our goal. The second point is that the first step for a sick person to recover is to admit that he or she is sick. For as long as our leaders don't admit that they have a problem, we are not going to be able to assist them as academics or as politicians or as religious figures or as anyone for that matter. So the first step, therefore, is for politicians to agree that in fact, they have some faults or they have some deficiencies, and then they will seek for help. The same goes for religious leaders, traditional leaders, and everybody else who defines himself or herself as a leader. So here I've proposed 5 points which I thought could be considered. I'm not saying that these are the only points, but I just identified the 5 points in order to get the discussion going. The first one is capacitation of the political leadership as well as other leaders, of course, because I'm mindful that leaders cannot only be politicians. So they need to be capacitated. There are people who have been elected into positions of power, and they do want to do the right thing, but they don't have the requisite knowledge and skills. And those ones are innocent, and therefore they need to be capacitated. Of course, we still find those who have some knowledge, but for some reason they don't use it because it's going to basically prevent them from what I refer to as plutocracy. So the ones that are good need to be capacitated. The second point, political and civic education at a lower level. Here I'm referring to the grassroots structures, because these are the people who elect leaders with questionable characters. So if they are educated, that you cannot elect someone or you cannot nominate someone with questionable characters, then it means that those people will be educated and they will know exactly what needs to be done. Because at the moment, they just follow a particular individual regardless of whether the person deserves to be a leader or not. So that for me would be the second discussion point. And then the third one, a revival of African value systems. African value systems were very useful and they could have assisted us here. And when I teach international relations theory, I start off by looking at Ubuntu philosophy and looking at all its characteristic features. And I tell my students that if we were to embrace Ubuntu, most of the social ills that we are dealing with here will dissipate. So then I'm saying that there should be a revival of the African value systems if we are prepared to, or if we are determined to assist our leaders and therefore ensure that leadership changes the image that has been created. And then the next point is purification of the church as an institution to instill moral values. Those colleagues who are in the religious sector will agree with me that the image of the church has been dented for a number of reasons. Even culprits, even murderers, even rapists, everyone who wants to hide whatever wrong he or she is doing will rush to church in order to look good, when in fact the reality is that person is causing the church more trouble. So I'm not going to prescribe what our church leaders are supposed to do. But the point I'm making here is our churches need to be purified because they're full of people who are not supposed to be there. Maybe out of 100, there could only be 30 people who are real religious figures or religious people who do things the way they should be done. The majority of them use the church as a hiding space, and this is a disgrace. Some leaders, of course, do this as well. They go to church if they want to hide some of their social ills. And then the last one is reinvigoration of the institution of traditional leadership. This is one area where I've done a number of studies, some commissioned, others for academic purposes. But then we've seen the institution of traditional leadership being compromised to the extent that lately, including my own province, KwaZulu-Natal, we've seen a number of traditional leaders being killed. It's not as if they've done anything wrong. It's because I also want that position because there is money involved. So then if we're to clean our church institutions and then clean the institution of traditional leadership, I'm hopeful that we'll be heading to the right direction, because then it will mean that whoever we put in a leadership position will be someone who deserves to be there. Now, please allow me to conclude, Chairperson, by making just a few points. The first one is that leadership is a very complex phenomenon. And I'm glad that the chair indicated that this is not an end in itself, but is a process. So that is my first departure point. And then, of course, sadly, almost everyone holds the wrong view that they can be leaders. Tom, Dick, and Harry thinks that they can lead, when in fact other people are good followers, but they cannot be leaders because they don't have what it takes to occupy that position or to earn that label to start with. And then financial and material needs have opened the floodgates for people to want to lead. That is, I'm on the next slide, Chair. So financial and material needs have opened the floodgates for people to want to lead. In other words, even people who know from the bottom of their heart that they can't be leaders because of financial prospects and because of a material prospects, they then force their way into leadership positions. And once they are there, they become a disaster because they were not supposed to be there in the first instance. And then immoral practices have been and continue to be employed in order to ascend to power. And the moral practices I'm referring to here are the ones I enumerated earlier. One whereby you find people killing one another in order to assume positions of power. And in some instances, people bribing others in order to assume positions of power. Like right now, the ANC is having regional conferences. Other political parties will also be having their own conferences, and there will be reports of bribes. Why? Because I know that I cannot be a leader and I cannot be elected as a leader. So the only way I can assume that position is to bribe the delegates and therefore tell them that I'll be a good leader. They will vote for me, not because they believe in what I say, but because they want the money that I give them. So in other words, these immoral practices are then wittingly or unwittingly perpetuated by both the doer and the receiver on the other hand. In the process, the country is heading in the wrong direction. So that's the point I'm making, that because of all of these things, financial interest, material interest, the country that is South Africa is heading in the wrong direction. No single solution could be a panacea to South African challenges or to South Africa's challenges. We all need to pull together as a society if we are serious about the future of South Africa. So the point I'm making is basically reiterating the point that was made by the chair, that we all have a responsibility. No single person can come up with the solutions that are going to sort all the ills that I've just enumerated. And it's just a handful. I mentioned only 10. There are quite a number of them. So you cannot expect to have one solution to all of these problems, because they are so massive and they are so complex and they are so dynamic, and therefore they need all hands on deck if indeed we are serious about the future of South Africa. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues.
Wow, yo. It feels like we could just ask you to say, can you start afresh again? Or can we just continue, or take us through once more, start from the first slide and do it again?
Thank you.
or wish we could say next week you come again with another one, or you can just continue. Wow, thank you so much. This is powerful, my brother. This is powerful.
Thank
Obviously.
you. Thank you.
I'll await our colleagues or participants to engage you, but thank you so much. Powerful nuggets that we've learned there. Something that you spoke about, which is very, very emotional to me, is the whole issue of political killings that we have in our country, especially in our governing party or ruling party called ANC. That it's always, when someone speaks about that, it's always emotional to me, because to some of you who have known me for a while, you'll remember, I know that I lost my son, my eldest son, in 2019. He was killed by one of the comrades. This was the, this ardent ANC cadre, Sianda Majola. I'm sorry if you know his name, most of you. His name is Sianda Majola. He was killed by an MKVA soldier. He shot him at a close range at a political funeral of. He was an MC at a funeral of one of the cadres, and then this soldier just came in. So. It's a reality, it's not a theory. So when we talk about that, some of us, we know we've lost family members. I may not be the only one in this room. Maybe some of you, you've had some instances and experiences as well with this thing. Professor Mngomezulu says leadership and morality are in short supply in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, can we imagine with a population of, is it more than 50 million? It's a fact that leadership and morality are in short supply in South Africa. Don't we have leaders, or it's just because of certain systems that we have, especially in politics, that they tend to, the one that are good leaders tend to be suppressed somewhere. And then the one that are bad leaders are the one who get attraction. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, we can engage the prof now. Let's see the hands. I can see Professor Zide, who wants to be the first one. Please raise your hands. Let's engage the professor. You can do that by raising your hand, obviously, by also via the chat room. So we'll start with Professor Zide, and then he'll be followed by Mr. Sipiwe Mngadi, and then we'll pick up others as well. Prof. Zide, over to you, sir.
He's muted, Chair.
Yes, you are just unmute there. Unmute there, Prof. Professor Zide, can you? Prof. Zide, we can't hear you. Can you maybe try to find someone to assist you there? Prof Zita, can you hear me? I can see. We can't hear you, sir. We can't hear you. Oh, now we can hear.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Start afresh. Start afresh, my professor. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Prof, let me, from the outset, thank Professor Mngomezulu for a very brief, wonderful, exceptional presentation. I can only embrace everything that he has said. But just 2 points, Prof. You spoke about killing, for a leadership position. But I think that the physical killing, and I'm not encouraging it, is more brutal than an emotional killing. Because sometimes you get people who kill physically in order to assume a particular position. But equally, you have people who are so devious to the extent that they kill a person emotionally. And when you kill a person emotionally, that's a perpetual murderous situation because it does not have a start and an end date. So it goes on and on. I would like to hear your comment about that. I've got practical example, but let me just cut it short. The Prof Majola has just related the story of how his son was killed. Only on Sunday, my stepbrother told us about how my nephew was killed in a Kurleni. They pumped 8 bullets into his body. And after that, they stabbed him several times. And they then broke his skull. So he was there. So these things also that was politically motivated. But having said that though, Prof, how do we infuse a mentality of listening to the ruling party? Because the ruling party is quite aware, not unless they digging and burying their heads in the sand. They are quite aware of these immoral activities. But some of them are actually behind them, and as a matter of fact, we have, as a platform, decided to write an open letter to the president, alerting him to some of the evils that he knows, but chooses not to attend to. And so it comes back to the issue that you raised, that one can take a horse to the river, but you cannot force it to drink. And finally, let me just mention one silly example. I mean, I'm happy that you come from the rural villages. I come from the rural villages, let alone my township help sometimes. It is totally immoral for a government of the day and a ruling party in the rural villages to see people drinking water with horses, cattle, pigs, and goats. And yet we say that, well, not we say, the government of the oligarchy says that we are a listening government, we're a government that cares. And how I wish that this presentation could actually reach the government of the day. And you have raised a very pertinent issue about the reinvigoration of the traditional leadership. This is a very important, because you get some people, particularly the ruling party, some of them, who have absolutely no idea of the role played by traditional leaders. So I think, Prof, I really want to take my hat off you and clap my hands for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof Z. Thank you. Prof Mngomezulu, can I take another 2, then you can respond. The next one is Siphiwe Ngadi. Incidentally, Siphiwe Ngadi knows my son very well, and he was his friend. So I'm so happy that he said that I spoke about his friend Siyanda Majola. And then Spiwe Mngadi will be followed by my brother there, Eric Naki. That's my dear brother there. Eric is the political editor at the Citizen. So let's take those ones, then we will then go back to you, Prof. Mngomezulu. Mr. Mngadi, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof. Majola, for the opportunity to address you tonight. Yeah, hey, you've opened old wounds. Yeah, Siyanda Majola was my comrade in arms. We used to move the ground together. We were part of the Fees Must Fall movement, and we did a lot of things for young people. But I just want to comment on the ruling party and how members get to join the organization, borrowing from the words of Thomas Sankara when he said, "A soldier without any political or ideological training is a potential criminal." So now in the ruling party, the documents are very clear. Before you become a member of the ANC, you should go through 6 months grace period where now you're trained. That 6 months is when you are introduced to these critical documents, which is through the eye of the needle and the conduct of a new case. Why are you introduced to these documents? So that you are shaped to the heritage, the culture of the ruling party. And within the ruling party, there is also a school, an online school. It's available within the website of the ANC. It's called OR Tambo School of Leadership. It's got modules there where it teaches you about the South African history, struggle, pre-colonial times and post-colonial times. Now you have a problem now because there is a huge fight within our country for power and resources, that the membership drive of the ruling party is no longer about recruiting people who are actually leaders of society or for the capability of leading people, but because you want to gain numbers so that when the time comes for the branch general members meeting or elective conferences, you are elected. Now you've got a situation where, just like eThekwini region, you've got a biggest region in the country in terms of membership, but the quality of that membership, it is not what is required, because the quality is people who cannot even articulate the policies of the organization. Now, number two, in governance. In governance, we have a situation whereby for you to be elected into the municipal, the provincial, or parliament, there is proportional representation. I think we need to revisit that. If we say a government for the people, by the people, we must scrap off proportional representation, and that people must have their representatives based on the number of people that voted, not the turnout, because that doesn't become the true reflection of democracy. And these things have to be addressed, because we know that the struggle in South Africa is not yet over. And there are things that have to be implemented by the ruling party. The resolutions are quite clear. As to why these things are not being done, I find it hard to even understand, because our people are suffering and the solutions are there. But how these solutions are driven, no one seems to be driving these solutions, because every time, if you talk about radical policies or pro-black or pro-poor policies, immediately the media nullifies you and sees you as a person who is counterproductive or wants to cause instability in this country. So long as we have not ironed out the issues that are really affecting us and dealing decisively with people that do not qualify to stand for elections, we will continue to have political killings. We will continue to have a lack of service delivery. Even with infrastructure, this week, what happened in KZN, we can blame Mother Nature, but projects are given to people for infrastructural development. What do? They buy cheap material and they do not finish projects. Now we don't have stormwater drains to sustain Mother Nature as and when Mother Nature decides to surprise us. So now we have a problem of people who having lost their lives, of areas that an infrastructure that is destroyed, not because of nature, but because of lack of leadership within our country. So if we do not have consequence management within the organization, because the leadership of the organization, both in the region, province, and national, they know the leadership of the organization within the branches. Because when it's conference time, you will see buses and transport and money and so many other things being dispersed. All of a sudden, now you see, oh, okay, these people are aware because they've got a database of everyone. So
thank you, Mr. Mngadi.
all right.
I'm sorry, sir. I know I did say, so sorry, Mr. Mngadi. I did say it's a topic that, it's unfortunate that you can say our people have already in the holidays or something, because yeah, I mean, really, it's such a hot. You can see that Mr. Mngadi feels like going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. But I'm sorry to be rude there, sir. I'm very, very sorry. We've got to give others a chance. I think we've got the gist of your question and your comment. Thank you, sir. Can we continue to Mr. Eric Naki?
Thank you very much, Professor Majola. Thank you for the opportunity. I greet you, Professor Mngomezulu. I said to Professor Majola this afternoon that I don't want to miss this one. Really, I don't regret, because I wanted to hear Professor, because I always hear him talking on radio and TV. I said one day I want to listen directly to him. You said all the interesting things. To me, you were more like referring to what is happening in the ANC. Because from the look of things, the things you mentioned, everything from the top to the bottom. But of course, you refer to the fact that it also affects society. That's what is happening in society, because you mentioned churches, you mentioned traditional leaders, these things are happening there. But the ANC right now is talking about unity and renewal. It's always been my argument that this unity and renewal doesn't look like it's going to work up for the next 5-10 years, or it will work past the current generation. Can you prove me wrong that it is going to work? Because how can we stem this tide where everybody, as you said, wants to be a leader? How can we deal with this matter and say, how can we stop this whole infighting for position? What can be done? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So over to you, Prof. Mngomezulu, and then we'll take another round after I've responded. Ladies and gentlemen, those who want to ask questions, please show us. But for now, let's allow Prof. Mngomezulu to respond. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof. Zide, and thanks, colleagues, for all your comments and questions. And in fact, we are all reading from the same. We are all reading from the same script, because the issues that you have had forms. And maybe before I address these questions directly, let me just give a general response when it comes to this issue of political killings, which is a big issue. And I was talking to one of my colleagues at one of the universities in the Eastern Cape, saying that it's okay to learn from others, but you guys seem to be learning the bad things. Because we've been talking about killings in KwaZulu-Natal, but we've seen incidences now of killings in the Eastern Cape. And I said, please don't mimic what we do or imitate what we do, because it's wrong. It's totally wrong. But anyway, let me just go through some of these issues. I think that Prof. Zide is making a very critical point of juxtaposing two forms of killing one being the physical one and the other one being the emotional one. And I can relate to this because one of the reasons I ended up in the Western Cape was because of these kinds of things. There were physical killings. I had to escape my province and go to the Western Cape after having spoken at the funeral of my best friend. And our sources had confirmed that immediately after the funeral, I was going to be next. So I left. So my friend died a physical death. They shot him several times, cracked his skull, and then opened his body with bullets all over, but he died a physical death. Then those of us who remained died emotional death and were still dying to this day because we knew who the perpetrators were, but then law enforcement agencies did not act on that. And right now we see them, and each time you see them, you think of your late friend, and this thing never disappears. So I think Prof is making a critical point on this one, because if you die emotionally, you die indefinitely. And I was once invited by the provincial legislature in KwaZulu-Natal to talk about Mandela and Sisulu. And one of the things I mentioned there was that the reason why we're celebrating these two leaders is because they did what was supposed to be done. And then I asked the honorable members, are you emulating them? And then I asked them, why do you think you guys are killing one another? And then they started giving me responses. I said, no. The reason we are killing one another is because we have lost a sense of direction and you think about the here and the now. If you kill your brother, where will the ANC be? Because all the brains are the ones who are dying and people who are useless are the ones who are going to remain. And where is the country going? Eventually, they agreed with me. Luckily, there were political parties from across the political divide in the province. And they agreed with what I was saying. Hard as it was a bitter pill to swallow, but they had to, because I said anyone who has a counter view that this issue of killings is a reality. And then the other point that Prof Zide makes about rural life, and then of course people living to drink water. In fact, currently, Dr. Zide, I'm in the process of getting ethical clearance to go and do a study at Jozini municipality, under which I belong. You know, Jozini Dam is big. It goes all the way up to Eswatini, but a number of local communities don't have drinking water. For me to get water from the pipe that is coming from that dam, I have to drive for 7 kilometers. There is a reservoir, but it's not working. Initially, we were told that it will start working as soon as they install electricity. Electricity is there now, but it's still not working. You ask people questions, you can't find answers. And in fact, I was happy an hour before joining this session when I received a call from one of the municipal officials saying that they want me to go and have a workshop with some of their leaders and then subsequently some of their branches and constituencies. I said, bring them across party lines, because I don't want to be seen to be servicing one political party. My job as an academic is to serve the nation and not to serve a political party. So the point about the urban-rural divide is a real one and is a concerning one. Unfortunately, most of our leaders come from rural areas. Once they're in government, they forget about their origin and then they think they're urbanized, which is a disgrace. And then that is why most of them, when they die, they don't want to be buried in their rural areas because they know the shame that is there. They want to be buried in the cities. Those are some of the realities. And then the point about the rejuvenation of the traditional leadership institution, you are absolutely right, because we need to give credibility. One of my colleagues, my academic colleagues, wrote a book where he was saying that traditional leadership as an institution has become obsolete. I had to take him head on. I wrote a piece that was, in fact, received globally. And 2 weeks thereafter, I met Frank Chikane because I had also challenged him on his book, on his book that he wrote when he left government. And then both of them were in the podium. And then I said to them, you know, I have nothing against you, but I have everything against what you say. Luckily, at the end of the day, we found one another. But Simpiwe, I can see that you are emotional about these things and you have a reason to be emotional. Because most of these things that happen, in fact, are not supposed to be happening. And I'm glad that you are citing Sankara, because last week I was talking to SAPC after the former president of Burkina Faso was in fact given a life sentence, even though he has left the country and is now residing in Cote d'Ivoire, and even received citizenship in Cote d'Ivoire. And I was discussing that issue, and I had to revisit some of Thomas Sankara's philosophies, including the ones that you just referred to, because that is one of the brains that this continent lost. He died at a tender age of 37, and he was smart. Had he survived, he would have led that country to a different direction. But unfortunately, because of these killings that we're talking about, the brains in our political parties are disappearing, and then those who are dead wood are the ones who are remaining, and therefore our countries and our continent then is heading to a wrong direction. And then the issue of the quality of our branches, the quality of our regions as political parties is at the center of all of this. Because you can have quantity, but then if you don't have quality, you might as well have just one person. Because the understanding is that if you have members of a branch who understand what the constitution of the party says, who understand what the philosophy of the organization is, chances are they are not going to kill one another. Some of them are doing what they're doing out of ignorance. Others are doing it because they are power hungry. And then they will do anything to make sure that they ascend to power at all costs. And then, of course, the nature of our leadership has changed to the negative direction because we fail to teach our branch members, and we fail to teach our members at the regional level, and we fail to teach our members at a provincial level, and then all of a sudden we expect them to perform miracles once they are in parliament. At one point when I was in parliament, I was asked to tone down, because I asked the chair of the portfolio committee where I was presenting that these honorable members, it's clear to me they didn't read the documents. And while I'm presenting, they are busy chatting, and then they're asking questions that are irrelevant. And they come up with a statement to say, no, we don't want all of this thing. Let these people go back and prepare. I had to stand my ground and said, can these members please withdraw their statements, because they are insulting. And some of them, of course, they were our students, and we know they were not smart. And then suddenly when they are members of parliament, they claim to know everything. And I said the same thing when I was addressing an event organized by the Commonwealth. And I was saying that one of the problems we're having as a continent is that we celebrate mediocrity. I was saying that some of our leaders don't deserve to be honorable members. I even told honorable members that, can we please have a relook at this label, honorable members? Can't we just say members of parliament? Because most of them don't do anything honorable, but they will kill you if you don't call them honorable members, whereas they have nothing honorable to show. Then lastly, coming to my colleague, Eric, the points you are raising are also critical points, and you are absolutely right when you talk about this anomaly of the ANC saying that they are preaching unity and renewal. And you are asking a pointed question, is this workable? My answer is an emphatic no. And I've written about this, and I've told them, I've told PECs that invited me to talk to them, and I told them point blank, this thing is not going to work. And at one point, I had an interview with the president for 1 hour, and I told him on the face that, Honorable President, I respect you as an elder, I respect you as an adult, I respect you as a politician, but I have no respect in the manner in which you do things. I said, as a leader, you must have a backbone. You can't try to satisfy everyone, because that is not difficult. It's impossible. It's not going to work. And then callers, of course, some of them said, no, yeah, but Mngomezulu, you must respect them. I do respect the president. I have nothing against him. But I have a serious issue when leaders fail to do the right thing, and they also defend themselves when they are corrected. Because those of us who are standing on the sideline, we have an objective view. We are able to say things that people can't say from within. And it's not that people don't see, by the way, they do see. I was with SAPC yesterday, and I was saying that the ANC does have brains. But the problem is that those who have brains and those who have a potential to lead the organization in the right direction, they are being sidelined. and then they end up taking a back seat. And then those who are vocal are the ones who are sent to the stage, and those who engage in killings, they are sent to the stage. Those who engage in bribes, they are sent to the stage, and the end result is what we see today. Let me pause the chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Thank you very much. Powerful there. Let me take these colleagues. There is in the chat room there, Israel, you've asked a question. I don't know if you want us to read for you or you'd like to express yourself. And I see another one, I think that was from Milarisi, also wrote a question there. Milarisi, can you express yourself? We can give you, unless you want us to read it for you. So those two colleagues will be then followed by Dr. Chuma Mangisa, and then we'll go back to the professor. Those three colleagues. Israel, would you like to express yourself? Otherwise, we can read your question, Israel. Israel is saying, is morality as defined in the normative was subjective, objective? I'm often attacked when I use subjective definition of morality, alluding to maximizing well-being, happiness, and health as a goal. This makes the assessment of consequence action an objective one. So that is the one from Israel. Milarisi, over to you, my sister. Good to see you. It's good to see you. You want to ask a question? Unmute, we can't hear you, sis.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Go ahead, sis.
Yes, thank you very much. My question is a very basic question, but it is one that actually addresses the quality of leadership based on what we've touched on today. It is not very public on what the criteria of the senior role of leadership in government is. So we usually just given a leader based on what the organization deem the good criteria that we don't really know what it is about. And morality, like we have stated today, is it part of that criteria? And if it is, in what context? You know what I mean? Is it in politics? Is it socially? Is it commercial, economically? What it is that really deemed a good senior leadership in government that can actually relate back to the African context, like we have touched on today.
Thank you. Thanks, Milarisi. And then we'll take Dr. Mangisa, and then we'll go back to Prof. Mngomezulu. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you, Professor Majola, and thank you to Gubabu Dlagala. Indeed, it is as if we must endlessly, continue listening to him. What he has said, uvula manxeba, in other words. However, where I want to come in, Prof, it's on the question of morality. Morality being able to, one being able to make a judgment call whether, actions that he or she is going to take, they are wrong or right. Now, where I am coming in as regards to morality, I had hoped that when, for instance, the death penalty was abolished, we were sort of looking at, some sort of moral canvas, to say, let that life not be killed, you see. However, we have laws again, that have, that have been passed that says, amongst other things, abortion is legal in South Africa. Now, to me, these are two contradictions, because when you abort, you are killing a life of a person. When they decided, you know, to say death sentence is abolished, it was because, you know, they elevated a life of a human being and thou shalt not kill. But now the question, therefore, when you're looking at this too, is what will make us believe that our leaders, including political leaders, will in future find a moral compass when we have these two contrasting laws when we talk about life of a human being. Abortion is abolished. Abortion is abolished, and death sentence on the other side is abolished. I'm not sure whether I'm making sense here, Prof.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Prof. Mngomezulu.
Thank you very much, Prof, and thank you, colleagues. Maybe let me start with the very last one from Dr. Chuma, while it's still fresh in my mind. Last month, I made a comment in one of the media houses, and I also wrote an opinion piece where I was agitating for a constitutional review. And I made some controversial statements when I said that when we conceptualized the interim constitution in 1993, we did so in a particular political context. And then we subsequently adopted the same constitution in 1996. And then I was saying then, almost 30 years down the line, the question we need to be asking ourselves is, does the constitution achieve the goals we wanted to achieve? If the answer is in the affirmative, right, we retain it. If the answer is in the negative, then we should review it. And then I was happy because 2 days later, I heard the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal making similar comments. And then also when Lindiwe Sisulu, that is Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, made similar comments in a different context, a number of people became vocal about it, including members of the senior members of the ANC. I took them head on. I wrote 2 pieces, one in Isizulu, another one in English, saying that one, they were not supposed to go public about this, criticizing the one of their own. They were supposed to sit down with her if they disagreed with her, deal with the issues and forget about the person. Because in most instances, when people were responding, they were saying, as a minister, this, as a minister, they said, no, forget about the person, look at the issues on the table. So the point I'm trying to make here is this contradiction between death penalty and abortion is one of the issues that need to be revisited. Because if indeed it's wrong to kill, then it doesn't matter how old the person is. So under normal circumstances, if you are against death penalty, you should ordinarily be against abortion. But unfortunately, this is not the case, as Doc has just correctly pointed out. So there is a contradiction. So when it comes to instances like this, we then look for solutions from the Constitution. And if we can't find one, or the Constitution is in fact saying the opposite of what we want to achieve, then let's just review the Constitution. I even made a point that in the life of a policy, in a policy cycle, you have a policy need, we have a policy formulation, policy implementation, and then of course, at some point we'll have policy review. So the same applies with the Constitution. It's a supreme law of the country, but then it doesn't mean that we have to retain it even if it doesn't achieve the goals we wanted it to achieve. And then the other point about morality, I'll answer this one together with the question asked by Dr. Chuma, that the general understanding is that we all have a sense of what moral behavior should be. And then without even going through book education or Western education, which is why I was saying that we need to invoke our African value systems. Because in our African value systems, including Ubuntu that I referred to, there are certain things which we know they are social taboos. You may be educated, but I for one, when I go to my to my village, and then I find people or elderly people sitting either in a meeting or just sitting and chatting, I normally buy them the stuff they like. Those who are drinking, I buy them alcohol, even if I don't drink. Those who use soft drinks, I buy them soft drinks. We sit down and talk. And if they want to bring me a chair just because I am quote unquote educated, I refuse. I say, no, you are still my elders. I can have 20 qualifications. The reality is you are still my elders. I'm drawing from Ubuntu values or African values. So the African value system then is what to guide us when we elect leaders and when we define morality. For example, if someone has been involved in questionable activities, obviously that person has engaged in an immoral behavior. So on what grounds that you then still see that person as a leader? If someone has done something wrong at home, you reprimand that person. Why can't we do the same when we go to political parties? Why can't we do the same when we go to our church institution? Because there are pastors who are corrupt, by the way, and then they still get into positions because I want to be in the pastor's good books. I will vote for him anyway, even though I know that he's done something wrong. Some pastors sleep with the youngsters in the church and they still get into senior positions. So that's why I'm saying that when we look at these issues, we mustn't confine them in one locality. You look at society in its entirety, and then you identify certain areas where this plays itself out, and then you'll be in a position to elect leaders who are going to lead society in the right direction, take South Africa in the right direction, take the African continent in the right direction, and then, of course, eventually take the world in the right direction. Because we have a number of international leaders who are engaged in immoral behaviors, but they're still there. And most of them are there because they are feared. Some are there because they've bribed people. So it's still the same thing. It's just that here we are confining our discussion to the South African context, and then, if you like, to the broader African context. Thanks, Chair. Oh, I didn't get the first one from my brother Israel, what it was. Can you please repeat it for me? Are muted, Prof?
Yeah, let me read it. Let me read it for you, Prof. So Israel is saying, is morality as defined in the normative way subjective or objective? I often attacked when I use a subjective definition of morality, alluding to maximizing well-being, happiness, and health as a goal. This makes the assessment of consequences, actions, and objective one. That's a question.
Okay, thank you very much. When it came to the normative definition, the point I made was that ordinarily you will have something that is understood to be the norm. And what is the norm is relative, because what is the norm in society A might not be the norm in society B. And then what is the norm in party A may not necessarily be the norm in party B, because that is why political parties have different manifestos, they have different approaches to politics and all of that. So basically, the point I'm making here is the issue of subjectivity and objectivity is also a relative issue, in the sense that what is objective for me might be subjective to someone else. But then when it comes to a normative definition, there is something on which we have a general understanding as a collective, either in a political party, in a church institution, in a political party, for example, or even as academic. There are certain things which we as academics would say this one is immoral or this one is unethical, and we can use other terms. But because there is a general understanding of how an academic should behave, the moment an academic derails, then we say that academic is unethical, which would be tantamount to saying that person is immoral or is acting in an immoral manner. So the subjectivity and objectivity part will then be a relative, but then the normative definition basically says that we all have a general understanding. That's all I can say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we can take the last round now, and then we'll ask the Prof to respond and to give us his conclusion. There is a question there, while others, if there are any others still want to, I see a hand from Dr. Sfiso Ngobo. who Israel is coming back. Israel, okay, we'll give a time Israel. So it would be Dr. Ngobo, and then will be followed by Israel. But there is another question. I see another hand there. Okay, my sister Nyami. Let me take those three. And then there is a question asked by you, Dr. Songelwa, but I think if you can just take that one in your conclusion. So the last round now will be Dr. Sfiso Ngobo, Brother Israel, and Usiswam Unyami. And then you can respond to the Prof. But there is a question there from Usongelwa, and then I will ask you to respond to it as well in your conclusion. Dr. Ngobo, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Prof. Majola. Thank you, Prof. Mngomezulu. Greetings, esteemed colleagues. Thank you, sir, for such a beautiful presentation. One will be a comment, then the other will be actually a question. I listened yesterday, interestingly, to an interview by the former Minister of State Security and Public Service and Administration, Ayanda Dlodlo, who indicated that from where he takes, because if you say you work as a collective, she says she has presented her report in terms of the state security about the July uprising. However, she makes something interesting and say, one day, the report that we presented will be declassified, and all information in relation to what she has written, to what she has recommended, and to what she has advised will be known to the public. But however, for now, she's in a good space, and she's not gonna wanting to get into both space. You know, I would want you to comment on that. Then she says, I mean, we are a cluster. The security cluster is comprised of police, army, intelligence, and home affairs. We're a cluster. If you are a cluster, you work as a collective, and only her has provided a report, and only her was removed, you know, whilst others are not, you know. That's just a comment, but you can throw in. I do agree with you in a notion of saying in most of our parliamentarian, when you use the word honorable, obviously it goes also with your ethical conduct. It also goes with your behavior. It also goes with taking the office of being an honorable member of parliament, in taking your responsibility and role very seriously. However, there is nothing honorable when you're also part of the institution, just because you want to advance certain individual goals. After you have served the institution and you're still a member of that institution for more than 20 years, then you come out as an individual and criticize the institution that you're still serving. You know, you are a policymaker. When you're a policymaker, you are criticizing the very same policy that you are making, but you are excluding yourself from there. You know, maybe you can also guide to comment on those. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thanks, Doc. Can we then ask Israel? Yes, Israel, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Majola, and thank you very much, Prof. Mngomezulu, for your amazing presentation. My question for this time around is addressed to one of the points you made towards finding solutions to the problem that we have in our leadership and the issue of morality. That says political and civic education at the lower level. I wanted to firstly know who is the audience at the lower level. Secondly, who would be most appropriate to deliver this education, and how do they ensure that the audience at the lower level do take this seriously, because in my experience, I have realized that leadership in politics is often associated with corruption or immorality. So a lot of us young people are just losing the interest in leadership and politics, because all we see in higher levels of our government is corruption and immorality. And if we have a sense of morality in us, we are going to lose interest in politics because of all the immorality that we see. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Israel. My sister Nyami Mandindi.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof. Mngomezulu, for your informative presentation. Really, I think these are conversations we need to really engage. However, I've got a comment, I suppose a suggestion, that maybe we need to institutionalize some of the things we talk about in these platforms, because we talk about what we don't want to see in our country in terms of leadership, the caliber, the honorable, the honor, and all the characteristics, the character flaws and traits that we would want to see in leadership. But we're not putting forward the template of what are the qualifications. I think someone in the platform has also asked about those roles, the qualifications in terms of character. We talk about academic qualifications, but we don't talk about what would we want to see and how do we begin to institutionalize those traits in a way that as we move forward as a nation, these are the platforms we build from in defining what our future should look like. The second aspect of this is a challenge that I have, and I suppose that I want to put across to us, is that we, in society, the three elements, the three aspects or wings, so to say, you've got the public sector, you've got the private sector, you've got the civil society. Of course, you might have other underlings, branches of the above. However, those are the three main. And we tend to, and that's something that has happened, which is very funny, post-94, that as Black people, we have resigned ourselves and predominantly focused on government. And we haven't entrenched and leveraged the power of the other two in as far as how we can influence our leverage on the third, which is government. So when we talk about the immorality of government and how do we deal with those, because indeed, one of the speakers talked about the emotional murder. And it's so true, because it's not just emotional. I mean, most of us professionals, there's a time when Black professionals were literally silenced and we had no voice in our country. And we're still pretty much silenced in as far as opinion and the extent to which government will take a Black specialist or even expertise. The voice of a Black expert, it must come from a white person or an overseas person for it to be, expertise as such. So I think one of the leverages we can do is to really begin to strengthen our communities. Someone mentioned about us running to the suburbs, running to the more developed areas. And I think we need to take our expertise back to where we come from and strengthen the institutions of civil society so that they are strong, they can fight, they can begin to push back on some of these things. Because the reason they can get enforced and get leadership that is not deserving, it's because people feel powerless. They haven't been given that extra boost, that buffering that begins to make their arguments sustainable or at least actionable. So I think we need to go back and begin to institutionalize platforms like these, ideas like this, and how do we take back what we're talking about into action, into strengthening our communities, so that moving forward, we're building a very strong community base that is going to be able to push back the corruption and push back the abuse by politicians, whoever those politicians might be. Thank you so much. That's my comment, that's all.
Thank you, thanks, my sister, thanks, Sister Nyami. Colleagues, I'm sure you can hear that's a very powerful, suggestion that Sister Nyami is putting to us, a proposal, actually, that we need to think about, and I hope we'll put our heads together in terms of, because, and I agree, really, we've been saying this before, it's one thing to come here and then we talk and talk and talk and talk and say all sorts of things, but where our positions, papers, where our, I think Prof Zita spoke about something earlier on, but what do we have when we go there? What can we show people that, yes, we have, obviously we have produced books out of this platform, the other stuff that we've produced, but I really agree with what Mrs. Nyami is saying, and then we'll have to look into that, and we are open for suggestions. I see that in university we used to talk about is the point of exigence. I see from Dr. Kuma Mangisa there, he has raised his hand, during those times, the SRC's time, point of exigence, comrade, no point, no, I've closed the meeting. No, it's point of exigence. Dr. Mangisa, over to you, my brother.
No, thank you, Prof. Majola. I want to concur with Usis Nyami. However, I also want to indicate to her, and to others to say, indeed, in our WhatsApp group, Prof, there is such an initiative where, we have agreed amongst ourselves to say, we have identified, our sort of deficiency to say, we are continuing to talk here, preaching amongst the converted, and we need to find a way, to approach the leadership so that we can see how can we best change, how they lead, for the benefit of all who are loving, this wonderful country. So you are supported, Sis Nyami, already. There is such an initiative. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thanks, Dr. Mangisa. Thank you very much. Thanks, Doc. Just before we come to you, Prof. Mngomezulu, I see another question there from Bongani Sikasa. Bongani, can we give you just a few minutes or seconds to express yourself before the professor responds? Bongani? Bongani Sikasa. Okay, maybe we can read his Bongani Sikasa's question, Prof. Mngomezulu, says, apart from the ruling party, how may the leadership of opposition may rescue the standard of leadership in politics? So that was the question from Bongani Sikasa. Dr. Mvusi Songelwa, there is a question you wrote there in the chat room. Would you want to give it to Prof. Mngomezulu so that he will just respond to everything once?
No, I captured it, Prof, while we were talking. Yes.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think, welcome on board, Prof. Mngomezulu. Thank you again for such an insightful presentation. Basically, my question and comment is soliciting your perception perspective based on what Upuchuma no Sisnyami has just spoken to in reference to Prof. Zide's assertion earlier on, that we say we are hurtful, and we have this suggestion that is here. Having engaged with you, I understand that you're actually part of another leadership, Hurtful Denk, that's not only African, but I think it's international. If you can just share that initiative with us, and probably just from your own perspective, look at how, what do you think the strategies should be for us to be listened to by this government? Because as you pointed out, when people raise their voices, especially academia, they get isolated from one reason or another. But that, I think what we are now really all as a collective saying, not only from this platform, but from, I think there are different corners of people that are really hurtful, civil society, private sector, and even within government. What is the best, from your own perspective, how can we be listened to by this government leadership? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Prof. Mngomezulu, you may respond to my brother, and then if you can also give us your parting shots, and then I'll close the session after you. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof, and thanks to colleagues for one, for the questions, and then two, for the very valuable comments that they've made, which basically take us to the next level. That is highly appreciated. Let me start with Mapolo. Dr. Ngobo, honestly speaking, the issue of the July riots was badly handled. I know this very well because when this whole thing started, the president labeled it as ethnic mobilization. I remember very well, I had 6 interviews on that statement, and I wrote 2 pieces on that. When I finished my last interview for the day, I remember very well, it was with ENCA. I received a call from a number I didn't know, and then this person said he wanted to talk, his boss wanted to talk to me. And then I asked him, who is your boss? He gave me the surname. Said, okay, put him on the line. We ended up talking for 2 hours. They have the money which they don't know what to do with, and then they spend time wasting it on me. So basically the point here was, I took the president head on, not because I hated the president, because I hated what he said. I indicated to this person whose name I'm not going to divulge, I said to this person, look, you hold a senior position in the government sector, and you are saddled with the responsibility to protect the office of the president and not necessarily the president in person. You have to protect that office, and you guys have failed dismally. You also failed to advise the president correctly. I then indicated to him that, by the way, I was in government for a short period, and I couldn't stay there for long because I was not happy with the bureaucracy, people wanting you to do things which you know they are wrong, and they expect you to do them anyway. And then I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Let me go back to academia, where I can have space to say the things I want to say the way I want to say them. So I told that gentleman that basically the president was wrong, because in the early 1990s, a number of people died because of this phrase of ethnic mobilization, where people who didn't understand the history of the ANC, the history of Inkatha and all of that, ended up making a simplistic assessment saying that the ANC is for Amaxhosa and then the IFP is for Mazulu. Then I had to teach them the leadership, the early leadership of the ANC, some think tanks from outside the Xhosa ethnic group and all of that. So eventually we understood each other, but then I'm not sure if he pardoned me for all the things I said, some of which I'm not going to say here. But then the reason why I'm reflecting on these things is because Dr. Ngobo is asking a question about former Minister Ayanda Dlodlo. When this thing happened, which speaks directly, by the way, to the point I made earlier on, where there are inconsistencies in implementing policies, rules, the constitutions of the party, and so on and so forth. In this case, the security cluster was found wanting when it comes to the July uprising last year. So ordinarily, one would have expected that any corrective measure would not be selective. The entire security cluster will have to be grilled, and then of course action will have to be taken. But in this instance, what the president did, he took state security and then he placed it under his administration. By the way, I'm glad, Prof, that I will be communicating. I'll send you some of these opinion pieces I wrote, especially on this issue, because I was talking about what I refer to as the super presidency, whereby you take all these institutions and then you crowd them under the presidency, basically giving the president more power, as it is the case, for example, in the French parliament, where the 1958 constitution crafted by de Gaulle is in fact giving more power to the president. So those are some of the issues that were of concern to me. So then former Minister Ayanda Ndlodlo's point is valid in the sense that if she was in the wrong, everyone in that cluster then should be found to have been in the wrong. If there are any corrective measures, then they should be applied evenly. What made this situation worse was when Ketla Sithole was removed and then the minister was retained. And then Ndlodlo's ministry was in fact removed from being a separate entity and then was placed under the presidency. So those are some of the concerns that some of us were raising. But then, of course, we can go on and on this issue. The bottom line is, I fully agree with you, Dr. Ndlodlo, Dr. Ngobo, that Minister Ndlodlo's point was a valid one, that it was selective, punitive measures being implemented in that instance. For Israel, I'm happy that you are making some critical points on this one. You are asking a basic question as to how we could then engage with those at the lower level, and most importantly, whose responsibility should it be? The point I made towards the end of my presentation was that we need all hands on deck. One of the things that we should be doing, for instance, is to avail ourselves whenever an opportunity presents itself. For instance, some political parties have leaders with a vision. And then when it comes to putting together party manifestos, they are able to solicit the views of people who are non-members. I've done this for a number of political parties. And in one instance, in fact, I even crafted a manifesto for a political party, which they used, and it seemed to work well. So in other words, the point I'm making is there are different ways in which we can do it. But your question is with regard to those at a lower level. So teaching at a lower level can be done in different ways. One, the church as an institution has a responsibility. There is youth in the church. There is something that the church can do there. Traditional leaders also can do something. We as academia can do something. So almost everybody has a role to play without necessarily being associated with certain political parties. And then the other thing, which will also speak to the point that Dr. Songel was raising, is that sometimes you find that some government departments will commission studies, and if they do commission those studies, they identify people they know are knowledgeable in that area. So if we are vocal the way we are, people are going to notice us, and then they are going to solicit our input. Whether then they implement what we recommend, it's another story. Because I know of reports which I've compiled, but which were never acted upon. And then once those political parties had problems, they came back to me crawling and then saying that, can you please assist us here? I said, but I assisted you guys, you never implemented. Go and check page so and so, paragraph so and so. This is what I said, exactly. Had you done that, you wouldn't be where you are. But I still assist them anyway. So the bottom line here is that those at a grassroots level can be assisted by all of us without necessarily saying that so and so is to do it. All of us have to put our hands on deck. And then Sisinyame is coming up with brilliant suggestions, and they are quite useful, in fact, in the sense that we're taking theory and then we're putting it into practice. And then, of course, our experiences are known everywhere. normally we normally talk about research outputs. I know this because I've been busy with this the whole week with the TVC of Research and Innovation, looking at who has published what in what journal so that we can send it to the Department of Higher Education and Training. But normally we talk amongst ourselves and we don't talk to the people who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of the knowledge that we produce. One thing, one way in which you can do this, for instance, for me, is to do what Sisnyam is suggesting. Let's go back to our communities. What I normally do in my local community at Ngwavuma, I organize workshops of different nature. Sometimes I organize workshops for school kids, grade 10 to 12. And then I get people to teach them book education. And then I come in to do civic education. And I educate them what they should look up whenever they identify people who are going to represent them, either as counselors or as ward committees and all of that. So those are the kinds of things I do. And that is my only modest way of contributing to society. When I go to a church as an institution, I also implement some of these ideas, and then I urge those who are church leaders that can we please do this to the youth in the church. So you are not going to have one big gathering or one big rally where we are going to implement these ideas. In bits and pieces, and doing it individually and collectively, we can achieve something. Dr. Songelwa's point or question covers a wide range of issues, some of which I've spoken to in terms of how can we listen to by politicians. One is to avail ourselves, like I've just said, when there are commission studies, when there are manifestos to be written, those kinds of issues. And even in the media space, one of the things, in fact, I've realized lately is that if you go to the media and you don't sing the tune that everyone has started, you become noticeable. Not that you become arrogant, but then you become noticeable. At one point, I had to bar a media house because they came to me having already made a conclusion on a particular politician, and they wanted to use me to authenticate their thoughts. I told them, you ask me a question, you wait for an answer. If you feed me with an answer, it means you know the answer, then leave me alone. Then I was not dealing with them for 3 months. When they came back, they told the lie. So the point I'm making here, therefore, is that politicians, some of them, not all of them, some of the politicians, they know that they don't deserve to be where they are. So they are protective of their space, and they are not, in fact, free to talk to anyone they assume might, in fact, rock the boat, as it were. But then if you indicate to them, I'm not a politician, I'm only coming to assist as a citizen of this country, they become receptive. They know they are not going to vie for their position, because ordinarily, most of these politicians, if they were to canvass in your area where you are also a candidate, you would already be 5 steps ahead. And then the only way they will deal with you is to kill you. So, but then if you come to them and explain to them, look, we are on the same page here. We're in the same corner. We all want to build society. You are doing it as a politician. I'm doing it as an academic. Let us work together. I've worked with a number of politicians across party lines, even those who are councillors in my area. I've worked with all of them, and there is no problem. So basically, there is a way we can do it. And then on the specific question from Dr. Songelwa, the structure that I belong to is called Indonza Yesizwe. Indonza is a star that shows up just before dawn, and then it starts bringing light, and then basically it tells you that the day has begun. So that structure is called Indonza Yesizwe. Initially, it was called Indonza Yezifundiswa because the idea was to bring together academics. But then later on, there was a realization that if we were to do it that way, it will exclude a number of people who would ordinarily have assisted us. So then it was changed to Indonza Yesizwe. So we're bringing together a number of people. We have traditional leaders. Some of them are from the Eastern Cape, others from Limpopo, others from outside this continent. And then we also have people with legal minds. We have a number of people, and then the majority of them are still academics, but then we have people from across all sectors. And what we do here, we realize that if we were to keep talking and talking, we'll be preaching to those who have already repented, and we'll be wasting our time. So we decided to form desks. So there is a research desk, there is a cultural desk, there is a religious desk. So there are different desks. So what each desk is responsible for then is to make sure that in its area, it becomes active, not only for this committee, but also looking at societal issues. Like for instance, right now, we have this issue of the incoming Isilo, that is the son of the late King Zwelithini, Mngomezulu. That is being contested. We have a desk that is responsible for traditional leadership, and it's been vocal in the media. You might have seen Professor Kulu, for example, explaining a number of these things. You might have seen Professor Matenja from a cultural perspective explaining some of these things. So we are basically saying that those theories that we discuss as academics are put into practice, and then society can benefit from that. So those are some of the things we could do. So in other words, in a nutshell, I'm saying that this is a very important group when it comes to leadership. Luckily, I've been involved in leadership training for different political parties. So that is one thing we could do, for example, would be to touch base with different political parties, and even, of course, the private sector. You could touch base with them and then say, these are the academics we've put together, these are their skills, this is what we have to offer, and then see if we couldn't make an impact in that. So basically, I think that those are some of the things that I would refer to. The point about made by Bongani was on leadership, leadership of the opposition. That is the one I'm going to end with. You know, I've said this on several times that one of the reasons why the ANC has remained in office, even if it has so many problems, is because there is no strong opposition. And in the Western Cape, where I'm based, I became notorious to the DA because I told them things they didn't want to hear, but I kept saying them anyway, even after they'd written me 7 anonymous letters, threatening this, threatening that. I said, go ahead, but I'm not going to change. And they've stopped now. I don't know if they'll resume later. But the point I was making was that currently at a national level, the DA is the official opposition, but then it fails to utilize the opportunities presented to it by the ANC through intra-party squabbles. And I was also saying that the other thing is that I don't see the DA taking over from the ANC because it is located in one province and it doesn't want to expand. When it does, it identifies 1 or 2 other provinces like your Gauteng, and then it identifies maybe some places in the Northern Cape and a few others as urban areas in KwaZulu-Natal. Then I said, you cannot run this country if you are confined in one province. The same applies with other political parties that are in the opposition. So the reality of the matter is opposition parties are partly to blame for complacency in the ANC, because had they positioned themselves as an alternative to the ANC, we wouldn't be having the situation we're having here. The only reason why the ANC didn't do well last year was not because of the opposition parties. It was because of the electorate. And they didn't vote against the ANC, the majority of them. If you did, they voted with the IFP, for example, in KwaZulu-Natal. Some were vocal about it, although they say your vote is secret. They were vocal about it. They voted for the IFP because they wanted to teach the ANC a lesson. But the majority of them did not vote because they still believe that the ANC can lead them, but not in its current state. So they said, let us withhold our votes and hope that the ANC will come back to its senses. Once it does, we'll go back and vote for them. But if the opposition parties were strong enough to capitalize on the space, chances are they would have taken over. But the ANC numbers are going down, and then opposition parties are failing to use the space. So they failed as opposition parties. That's my short answer. And then in conclusion, Chair, let me first thank you all profusely for the reception I received. And then in particular, I thank my colleague at the Nelson Mandela Museum Council, Dr. Mbusi Songelwa, who is my boss, for having suggested my name to your Prof. Majola. I really appreciate this opportunity. I've enjoyed myself, and I've learned as much as you think you might have learned from me. I've learned a lot from this engagement, And I can only wish this group well, and then hopefully we'll be engaging on many other issues and work together to take our country forward. Because if we leave this country in the hands of politicians, we are heading for disaster. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, my brother. Indeed, once you attend this platform, it's very contagious. There is no way you won't come back. I said we'll definitely be collaborating and engaging you a lot. Most of the people here, our past speakers, Sisinyami was speaking a few weeks ago. I see Professor King Costa there. Actually, King Costa was the first speaker of this platform. That is my brother and colleague, Prof Costa. You see Prof Z there. You see Brother Sentima. Or I can name most of the people who are here, really. So thank you so much. As I've said, that we meet here just to empower each other. How wonderful it is, peers talking to other peers, leaders talking to other leaders. We learn a lot from each other. There's so much that we've learned tonight. And then I want to assure you that definitely we will implement most of the things or everything that was put forward here. My colleagues are here. Professor Zeda is here, Dr. Chuma Mangisa is here, Dr. Songelo is here, and all others will put our heads together and see how can we pull this thing together as Usisinyame has proposed and moved us to say, really talking is not going to take us anywhere. We know that we are scholars, we are academics, we produce theories, but at some stage we need to implement things. We need to execute. We need to go there with those theories that we have produced and then go out there to people. So my colleagues are here, very capable people, and I'm very sure that we put things together that will benefit all of us. But we are open for suggestions. And also any ideas that can take us forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Those who've joined us for the first time, thank you so much. We meet again next week, Wednesday, as we meet every Wednesdays. I can see that tonight, as I've said, that most of our members have gone away for holidays already, but we had a wonderful session. I always say it's not about quantity, but it's about quality. And tonight, I'm telling you, anyone who was here will say that, can you bring this man again next time or next week? So Prof. Mngomezulu must always be ready. When I say, hey, these people want to back, but come back again. But I know that obviously we are always available. Thank you so much, my brother, Prof. Mngomezulu. You've moved us. You have inspired us and you have really empowered us. There's so much you've taught us tonight, the nuggets that you gave us that we are going to cherish forever and definitely that we are going to implement. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, thank you very much and may you enjoy a blessed Easter weekend. We'll see you again next week, Wednesday, for another powerful session. The session is closed now or it's adjourned. Until next week, and may God bless you. Thank you. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Prof. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Thank you very much, Prof.